Muzyczna jesień w TVP Kultura. Muzyczna jesień od 13 września w TVP Kultura.
Hej. Tak, a poziom masz ok? Bo zostawiłem ten -5 tam, jak miałeś wcześniej. Dobra, to tylko coś pani powie jeszcze do headseta.
Halo, halo. Mówię.
Wszystko zaczęło się w tarnowskiej kuchni. 3 kumpli z podstawówki, którzy złapali piwowarskiego bakcyla.
Dobra, to ja na razie zamykam panią.
Decyzja o skoczeniu na większe gary była dość szybka.
Dobra, no to...
Po bliskich browarach zaczęliśmy ważyć nasze piwa.
Dobra, no to hej.
Początki nie były łatwe. Dopiero pan i pani uczynią nasz browar rozpoznawalnym. Mawiają, że to jedna z ikon polskiego kraftu. Ważymy głównie nowofalowe piwa z rodziny IPA, ale też klasyczne pilsy i Belgii. Bardzo staramy się, by nasze portfolio pokazywało bogactwo piwnego świata. Nasze piwa są cenione, ponieważ od samego początku trzymamy się wiernie zasady ważymy co lubimy. Codziennie doskonalimy nasz warsztat, bo chcemy ważyć piwa na światowym poziomie.
Ja tu się już nie ruszam.
Ogromną radochę z tego, co robimy, daje nam partnerstwo z browarem Za Pan Brat. Michał i Przemek stworzyli świetny zespół i fantastyczną atmosferę pracy. Myślę, że nasza relacja jest bardzo unikatowa.
Wiesz co, z mojego...
Naszym marzeniem jest niewielki browar w Tarnowie, który będzie przedłużeniem tego, co już stworzyliśmy z Za Pan Braćmi.
Tres complete. Nice bit of smoke. Absolutely fantastic beer.
O, super. Zatem... No wiesz, jak mówię, to słyszę siebie. Mam taki fokus, więc to też jest takie inne. Tak, tak.
Piwo o nazwie Amo.
Jasne. To jest
mój
tylko
Boże.
kwestia przyzwyczajenia się.
Tak, wszystko to jest.
Tak, tak. Zatem to jest tylko w momencie.
Muzyczna jesień w TVP Kultura. Muzyczna jesień od 13 września w TVP Kultura.
Wszystko zaczęło się w tarnowskiej kuchni. 3 kumpli z podstawówki, którzy złapali piwowarskiego bakcyla. Decyzja o skoczeniu na większe gary była dość szybka. Po bliskich browarach zaczęliśmy ważyć nasze piwa. Początki nie były łatwe. Dopiero pani uczynił nasz browar rozpoznawalnym. Mawiają, że to jedna z ikon polskiego kraftu. Ważymy głównie nowofalowe piwa z rodziny IPA, ale też klasyczne pilsy i Belgii. Bardzo staramy się, by nasze portfolio pokazywało bogactwo piwnego świata. Nasze piwa są cenione, ponieważ od samego początku trzymamy się wiernie zasady ważymy co lubimy. Codziennie doskonalimy nasz warsztat, bo chcemy ważyć piwa na światowym poziomie. Ogromną radochę z tego, co robimy, daje nam partnerstwo z browarem Za Pan Brat. Michał i Przemek stworzyli świetny zespół i fantastyczną atmosferę pracy. Myślę, że nasza relacja jest bardzo unikatowa. Naszym marzeniem jest niewielki browar w Tarnowie, który będzie przedłużeniem tego, co już stworzyliśmy z Za Pan Braćmi.
Tres complete. Nice bit of smoke. What an absolutely fantastic beer.
Piwo o nazwie Amok. No mój Boże, ale wszystko tu jest.
Muzyczna jesień w TVP Kultura. Muzyczna jesień od 13 września w TVP Kultura.
Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good morning, especially in one case. Yes, Josh, hello. Hello from Krakow. I have this privilege to be here personally, physically, with the wonderful team of Jazz Juniors, with Tomek, Aneta, and Ula. So I'm very happy that I could shift from Katowice to Krakow. I'm here in the place. And, we have the topic of contemporary music market and the high demands, the requirements right now. And I would like to say hello to all of my guests right now who are here joining us from different parts of the world, from different time zones. So starting from this morning guest, from the morning person, Josh Grossman, Toronto Downtown Jazz Festival. Hello.
Good morning. Great to be here.
Great to see you. Are you already after your first coffee or not yet?
Not yet. That'll come later.
Okay, great. Fantastic. So, and then Jaak, sir, Estonian Jazz Federation, Estonian Jazz Union, Eesti Jazz Lead. I had to say it. I love Estonian language. So, Jaak, hello. You are 1 hour ahead. So you are probably in the lunchtime right now?
After lunch, sleep.
Okay, that's perfect. This is like perfect time. And Jakob Flarer, we are in the same zone. Representing Saudades agency on your side in Austria, representing Miasto, Ogrodów, Katowice on my side in Kraków, Katowice, Poland. Hello.
Hi, nice to meet you. Thank you for the invitation.
Yes, hello. So how are you today on Friday? Very busy, not that busy, pandemic or post-pandemic? How is it going now at your places at the moment? Is it post-pandemic or still pandemic right now? Jakob.
For me, it's still super pandemic, but it's actually since the beginning of the pandemic, it's a bit like a roller coaster, because we as an agency always work like if Corona would not exist. So when the spring season was cancelled because of the pandemic, we were booking the summer season. We were cancelling the summer season, booking the fall season. Now cancelling the fall season, booking the spring season, and that's what we have to do, because if at a certain point the pandemic would be over or traveling would be possible again, I would not have anything in my hands to give over to promoters if I would not act this way. So that way, we are in a super pandemic mode, but with ups and downs every day.
Okay, thank you very much. Is it different in Estonia or is it different in Canada? Josh, how is there? Well, you're starting the day, you're starting the weekend, so how is it in Canada?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's similar in some ways to what Jakob was just saying. I mean, we have to be planning at the moment for next year's festival, which happens at the end of June. This would actually be one of our busiest times of year, typically, as we start to line up artists and things like that. And for the moment, we're not sure exactly what the festival will look like next year, but we know it'll look like something. So we have to be planning for something. So we are making the best plans that we can make under the circumstances while having all of the possible backup plans on the go at the same time. So it's this strange double life of being constantly thinking about what it's going to be and constantly not necessarily being able to do anything about it right at this moment.
Yes, I understand it fully. You have also some news from your neighbors from the south, as we heard, like the whole world. So, well, the borders are still closed, right? There is no movement between the countries, or...
That's correct. And that's one of the biggest challenges. I mean, we have all kinds of capacity restrictions in place for our venues here. I'm not sure if the same holds true in Europe, but so, we're trying to figure that out. But even if we didn't have those capacity issues, the travel restrictions are the biggest challenge for bringing in artists, obviously, from out of the country, because no one's going to book a tour with a 2-week quarantine period in front of that tour. I mean, that's 2 weeks of dead time. So it's difficult to know how to even speak with artists from outside of the country at the moment.
Yeah, thank you. And Jaak, is there any difference in Nordic countries, in Estonia? Is there any better? You are our only hope right now to say something more positive that maybe is going a bit towards a post-pandemic mode. Is it? Please?
Well, I think we are now, the way of life is just thinking 1 week ahead. So if you plan longer, this is waste of energy. I think it's good to really live in the moment, which is actually
that's good.
Not a bad thing at all. For example, next weekend should start the Jazz Card, the biggest festival of Estonia, which was postponed from April. And the lineup is changing almost every day. I was in their office today and everybody is taking it very easy. And for example, I have to play with a drummer who is from Finland, which is 80 kilometers from here. And I think he can come and he will come, but after that he has to stay at home for 2 weeks. But we have had 3 months pretty normal life and normal concert life with festivals well attended, no restrictions at all. But now the second wave is about to come. But as a musician, I have been lucky to play about 20 normal concerts after spring quarantine. So I think it's not so bad.
So yes, at least there is some hint of hope. We are happy about that. Here in Poland also, since the end of June, we could participate outdoor, indoor. The festival is Jazz Juniors is happening, which is a miracle, which is great. We are very happy to be here all physically with concerts, real people, real musicians. However, going back to our main topic, the requirements, I think that we would have completely different conversation if this discussion would happen in January. The requirements would be different, I think, or even February, or even beginning of March. However, now I think that this big requirement and requirements changed quite radically. And I think that maybe one of the biggest demands right now is the high quality of streaming. Of course, streaming would be very necessary to talk about. And maybe this is right now the high demand that we have and we are facing every day. very often, too much, maybe, even perhaps. There is this very good expression that I heard, the glut of content at the moment that we face every day. So is it really streaming the highest requirement right now, that musicians had to shift towards this mode and have to think about a completely different way of performing? How would you describe it? What do you face at the moment, Jakob? Do you watch a lot of online content or not so much?
No. And I also I think streaming is not the solution, and I do think that live music in that way is not replaceable. Also, the live experience. What I experienced over our work of the last year was, or since the start of the pandemic, is that streaming could work as a substitute in one way from the worst things of like weird living room concerts up to super high quality live shows in clubs without audience. People would watch that and would also pay for it, mainly because of solidarity, I think. But I think as soon as it somehow will work again, that we could join live concerts, then also streaming will go back. It will stay in addition as an additional tool, but I don't really think it will replace anything.
Yeah, that's true. I think that we hear it, we face it, we have this lack of real music, the live music every day. But Josh and Jaak, you are also performing. You are also musicians yourselves. You have experience with large ensembles as producers, as musicians on your own. So is it working for you at all, the streaming and all the virtual life in your case? Josh, how would you feel about that?
Well, my main performance outlet these days is with a large ensemble, an 18-piece big band. So that's sort of a non-starter for me. There are people that have done the virtual concerts where everyone sends in their individual videos and they sort of assemble it that way. I just haven't gone down that road for any number of reasons, in part because of the time and the effort, frankly, that would be involved in that. Working full-time to have to, it's a whole new skill set, the streaming thing. And that's I think, both an advantage and a disadvantage for this whole situation, because I think the musicians that jumped on board early and have really done the research on the technology and figured out how to create the best possible sound, the best possible video, I think they're going to be in very good shape coming out of this, just in terms of being connected with their audiences and, having just educated themselves a little bit about how to use technology in general. But at the same time, it's not realistic to expect that every musician is going to be able to do that. And so I fear a little bit for the musicians that, whether they don't have the technological know-how or they're at a stage in their career where they just don't care to have to learn something new, I'm a little bit concerned that those musicians are going to come out of this a little poorer for this. I'm not sure how well they're going to be able to sort of adapt to whatever the new reality is, which will undoubtedly involve some mix for the next little while of both live performance and stream performance. So I've sort of got my eye on that a little bit. But Jaak, I'd be very interested to hear what you have to say from a more sort of performing musician standpoint.
Well,
yes, definitely.
I think luckily we are in a different situation here, and Estonian audience can still go to live concerts. So in Estonia, I don't see really a need for streaming at the moment. We had some streaming stuff in spring, and the main jazz club here, Village Shows, they have really invested into a streaming thing. And my only personal experience is that festival in United States asked for an exclusive concert of my trio, and we did a streaming concert in this club, and it was nice, except we played a tune, and when I said it was completely empty and the club and silent, and then I said thank you, and then turned a new score and said the next tune is going to be. It was a bit spooky, you know.
Yeah.
So it is not easy to keep the spirit, you know. Of course, it's possible, but there is no feedback, so you just play. So I definitely like to do it with audience more. But if this is the reality, we will do it. I think we have to, you know, we have to be flexible. But as soon as we can, we should play live. That's for sure.
Yeah, so thankfully we have this pandemic now in 21st century when we have internet. Wow. So this is luckily that we have some resources, and even if we don't like that, maybe this is sometimes the only chance to perform, to show something. I've been talking recently with American clubs, with New York clubs, and they say that they are very grateful for that, and they are very grateful for their listeners to donate, because this is the only way how to cope with this wrong situation that is wrong, like from the beginning till the end, obviously. So then the requirements that we are talking about. So now, facing this era and having this need, do you think that musicians would also promote themselves in a different way? Do they need different ways of, well, obviously, there's always good video needed, good photographs, good track, good everything that is related with PR. But in this era, in virtual era, do you think that this value is different now? That ways of promoting, ways of showing yourself in the internet, it has more, I wouldn't like to say value, but is there anything new that you found out, that you encountered? For instance, I was participating in quite many speed meetings, live to live, of course, one person to person in the past. And now the speed meetings keep on going virtually. But still, I see that very many artists are very well prepared for that. They make video, then insert during the speed meetings on Zoom. And this is even more important now to have this good promotional material, as I think, in the past. Because when talking to a real person, it can convince you on its own. However, now having this very good background in technology, in good PR, in visuals, it is very important. And do you also face it as musicians, as agents? I remember that when Jakob, we talked years ago about that having good portfolio, good photographs, it's still like not very obvious. So would that help the pandemic to make some new promotional materials? It would be so great. Jakob, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it definitely helps. I think it's not that the pandemic helps, but it's not only a question of the pandemic, but also a question of youth. In a way that the emerging artists are getting better and better, and now being forced to stay at home, having forced time to stay at home and do something might help creating new skills in this direction. And what I think is that the quality of EPKs and of promo material will definitely get even better through this new skills. And I also think this will help the self-publishers more than the bigger labels, in a way, because this lockdown situation of such a long time, with no support, where everybody had the need and was forced to promote him or herself and to stay in contact with the fan base and to try to release interesting things, interesting content, will help in the future for everybody who wants to release and to publish by him or herself.
Yeah, thank you. This is a very good point, because this is really sometimes a matter of just having this freshness, being comfortable with social media, being aware that Instagram is important, and all these like random reactions are important. I think that North America is really a pioneer in all the software and everything. So Josh, do you experience that now it's more valuable or more needed than ever, like good PR, good content, good visual content?
I mean, I think that's always been important, but I think what Jakob was sort of saying there a little bit about, especially the way that content is being produced now, I think that's what's becoming more important. Again, and from a consumer standpoint, as the audience, the online audience grows, and they now expect certain things. Maybe they expect artists to be very comfortable doing an Instagram live, or to be on TikTok, or whatever the case may be. I mean, artists have to sort of adapt to that and recognize that. At the same time, as a larger audience moves online, they're going to want to follow up with an artist much faster and much more easily than maybe they would have before. So, but it was always important from a festival producer's, a booker standpoint, for me to be able to click on somebody's website and get all of the information that I need very easily. But now that artists are interacting much more directly with their fans online, that importance is much more heightened now. Because if an audience member now goes on and wants to find out more about an artist and maybe buy a CD off his or her website, and their website isn't up to snuff, then they're missing opportunities to make a sale or connect to their audience in a different way. So, the fundamental quality of the material, regardless of pandemic, has to be there. But now it's just the necessity for that has been slightly heightened, I would say.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think the same. That now we really have to struggle in every way as musicians, as promoters, as festival directors. So at Jaak, could you tell us that how comfortable you are with Snapchat, for instance, or other things, or you don't care about it at all? Estonia is also very good in visuals, very good in promotion. Well, I saw your video that is promoting the EJC, European Jazz Conference, next year, that we are all looking forward after this gap. So it was fantastic. You also know how to make it. And you personally, as musician, as promoter, how comfortable you are with TikTok, for instance?
Well, TikTok, I have to talk to my daughter. I'm not sure my audience is ready in TikTok. But actually, Martyna, can I come back to the previous question? I was thinking, Estonians are slow. We are from the north, so you asked the previous question 10 minutes ago. Now I have an idea about that. There's this, we are now in Zoom, which has been tested many times during this lockdown for jamming, and it doesn't really work. But there are also other programs, for example, low latency, which, for example, we have in Estonian Academy of Music and Theatre. And how could the music community or jazz community over the world develop it, that it's available everywhere? Because if you have it, for example, at schools, we can do it, that we have a saxophone player in Estonia, a drummer in Miami, musicians all over the world, and they can play together without any problems, as it is in one room. And I think this could be really a big help for, in many ways. We could have a guest from Austria to play with our trio or something, And I think this is just a technological question which needs to be just developed. I mean, it is here or it is there. So maybe we should look more at this.
Yeah, the solutions. And thank you for also mentioning that, because this is a very concrete thing. We are talking now about names. We are talking about software that is really useful. And that was actually purpose of our talk. Just to give some hints, the requirement of the contemporary music market that I would like to maybe go a bit deeper and just to forget for a while that pandemic is going on, or it even happened. And that musicians are still touring. We are going back to normality next year, let's say. And what we could learn from this situation, what is before, obviously would like to talk also about Polish music market and Polish artists who are listening to us, who are performing, who are here with us at the Jazz Junior Festival. So, okay, let's forget that the pandemic is happening anyways. They're going back to touring, they're going back to their great PR, they're going back to the concerts, developing their fan base and all this. So you're familiar with Polish artists. You play with them, you visit festivals, you work with the clubs, with the festivals, with the venues all around here. So is there anything for now that you would say that is difficult for Polish artists? Like, obviously, to Canada, it's very difficult at the moment. But again, forgetting that pandemic is over, would be any hint, right, that we could learn from something and say, like, hey, now we learned something and we're going back to normality. So, Josh, you have experience, you know the artist, you chose the band yesterday. So what do you think that if pandemic is over, they are traveling, they are performing, everything is fine. But if not, what would be the solution? And let's forget that streaming exists. So.
Well, I mean, as an artist, I think it's really important to certainly understand that every market is very different. And so the music that you're performing, the music that you're very passionate about, it will definitely resonate with some audiences and it definitely won't resonate with some audiences. And that's just the reality of the thing. And so, you know, as you say, getting from Europe to North America is an ordeal, even at the best of times. I mean, it's a long way to go. It's very expensive. And so really doing the research to reach out to those markets and those venues and those audiences that will probably best resonate with your music, I think is going to be a really important step. And working with a manager or an agent that really knows those different markets as well and can sort of help you navigate that, I think is going to be super important because, again, that trip, it's such a huge investment for artists to make. And I know when we have the trios come over from Poland, we're going to do our best to help them find other gigs in the area, not too far from Toronto, a little bit of travel, but not too much, just to make it that much more worth it for them to come over. Because it's a long way to come if you only identify, you know, one audience. So you have to do the research and make sure that the trip is going to be worth it for you.
So that's a very practical hint. Do the research, right? And when you're applying, when you're targeting, that's very important to do the homework first and then to reach out knowing these realities, first of all. And then you mentioned just something that is very important about travels, about expenses, about everything. That now, of course, we can reconsider this issue because of the long flights and carbon footprint. It's very important now. I think that now pandemic also brought us to this topic again with rethinking all the issues. So, Jaak, you are playing in different setups with different lineups. Is there also something that you would rather say, okay, I'm skipping flying and I would rather travel by car all over Europe and just stay on the continent better? What would you say? What would you do? Would you skip the overseas travels or not necessarily?
I think we are in the situation now that we have to be flexible. And this is what helps. I mean, I will do what the situation asks me to do. So I can walk, basically. I mean, also to walk to Poland is possible. And I mean, like you asked from Josh about going to Canada, it's very far away. But for example, my message to Polish musicians is that we are very close to you. But we see very few Polish musicians here because I think they are looking to west or maybe towards Austria, you know, to south, but not really to northeast. So come here. I mean, it's great audience and it's great scene here. Be more interested. Or I mean, if you cannot get Village Vanguard right away or Carnegie Hall, maybe you can get some gigs in Estonia. But you have to be interested. You have to check it out.
Yes, Vabalava is not worse, definitely. And venues and audience is fantastic in Estonia. But Jaak, you mentioned Austria. Is it really like the paradise for Polish musicians, Jakob? Because you know the reality here as well. You come here for the festivals, you see, well, you bring over a lot of American musicians. do you work with Polish artists right now? Do you have anyone in your roster? Are they coming really to Austria or not that much, as it would be great?
Come to Austria. No, as a matter of fact, I just first, before answering your question, I wanted to comment something from Jaak. I think this is it's not a question of south and north, because we experience same situations almost everywhere, like French musicians complaining not playing in Germany, Italians not in Austria, Germans not in Austria, Austrians not in Czech Republic, Czechs not in Poland, and so on. So I think this is also a question of nationalism, which concerns me a lot, and I think there's also like a question of political support in a way which would be needed in a stronger way to help, in your case, Polish musicians to leave the country and to perform in other places, or Estonians to come to Poland or wherever, because because I think this mainly works through cultural, bilateral, multilateral works. And now I forgot your first question, Martyna, sorry.
Yeah, I was just thinking when you were telling about that, do you think that it's like easier sometimes for the artists, okay, being a bit obnoxious right now and a bit like critical about that someone's like, okay, you know, Norwegians, they always have support. They have everything easier. And, you know, they could travel because they have travel support, they have travel funding. And for Polish, it's always more difficult because we don't really have this complex, the regular support. So it can be like easy excuse. How it's in Estonia? Do you have some kind of regular support from the government, from cultural institutions? I know that Canada has also developed, but also in different regions, so it also differs from place to place. But Estonia, is it easier? Does it make it easier? Does it require more or less from you as an Estonian musician, or is it exactly the same as in the States, for instance?
Well, I think we are on the right track. It has become so much better, and it's obvious that a small country like Estonia can be known in the world via its culture, and music is probably the most known part of our culture, starting from the classical composers, world famous people. So I think if you are good, you can apply for support and you can do things. That's for sure.
Okay, in Canada, the Canadian Music Week, there are different festivals. It's very famous also like regarding key change that is important for us, the gender balance. It's very progressive, it's very new, very fresh. And I know that Canadian artists from different parts of Canada or the country, they have some support. How is it in Toronto? How does it look like in town?
Yeah, I think we and I want to be a little bit careful about what I say, but we sometimes look at other countries, especially actually some of the European countries who have these very robust government-based cultural export programs, which we don't have for all kinds of reasons. We have grants available that artists can apply for. We have really fantastic grant support here in the country at the federal level, at the provincial level, at the municipal level. So there is lots of support, which is great. Finding support specifically for travel is a little more challenging, but it is still there. But one of the challenges we have in Canada is it's just such a huge country that to support musicians from across the country would be an enormous undertaking for any sort of single cultural export office. So that's I think that's a challenge that we're facing here, and so I'm not sure how to get around that exactly. But there is support available for an artist that wants to go over to the States, or just within the country, or over to Europe. If they can get 3 or 4 gigs together with some nice contracts, then they can apply for some grant support to get over there. I mean, the thing about touring Jaak and Jakob, you can both comment on this as well. But it's just expensive. Like, so even an artist that is going to get a grant, even to stay within Canada, an artist is going to spend most of their money on travel and accommodations, and the money they make at the gigs is maybe going to cover their food, you know, and gas. And then at the end of the day, you know, especially when artists are first starting out, there's not a lot of money going into the bank account at the end of the tour. And that's just the reality of it. So it's, I mean, any sort of touring, regardless of support, regardless of grants, etc., it's a building enterprise, and you have to keep doing it and doing it and doing it. And eventually the balance sheet improves. But for the first little while, it's kind of a drag from that pure bank account standpoint. But the connections that you make and the audience that you build and the other musicians that you get to know in all of these different markets, I mean, obviously that's invaluable for the development of a musician.
So this is one requirement that was mentioned. Yeah, sorry, Jakob. I will give you. So one requirement that was for sure, not only now but forever and ever. It's flexibility that Jaak mentioned, and then a lot of patience, right? And maybe some kind of resources from elsewhere. That would be great, but no, that would be perfect, obviously. But Jakob, you wanted to add something. You wanted to mention.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I totally agree with Josh, obviously. And I think that we will need higher sustainability in this business. And I'm not necessarily talking about environment, of course, that too. But I'm talking about energy, life energy of and for the artist. It's just perverse if, and that's my experience over the last years, if it's cheaper and easier to perform a show in Rome and the next day in Gdansk instead of performing a show in Gdansk and the next day in Warsaw. And that was the case over the last 10, 12, 15 years, that it was just easier to do those flights, and that in the end creates like tours like this in Europe. And there was no understanding except from some, I have to say, but in general, there's no real understanding for this artists need, and in that case, the agents need too, that we would have to build regional blocks to say, okay, so we can perform 4 or 5 shows in the area, let's say, of Poland, including the Baltic countries and the Czech Republic, let's say, and then we move on to Germany, France, and then we move on to Spain and Portugal instead of like traveling like this, and that's my big hope. For the time after that, also traveling and especially flying will be so expensive that we just can't afford it. And that way, we would get the flexibility from the organizers' side too, the flexibility in dates. I would say that they would say, okay, they would agree to take a Wednesday instead of a Friday, just to make things happen. Because our reality, like by bringing over artists from overseas and sending them on tour, is that we pay between around 45% of the tour income into production. Production means travel and overweight expenses and stuff. So if you're lucky as an artist leader, you have maybe 50% of what you earn left after that. And if you pay your side artists properly, you will take a loan to fly back home because there's nothing left for you. And that's the main problem. And that's what we all together, I think, have to work on, to keep travels low, to keep travel expenses low. If travel expenses are low, then the fees can be lower too, because we won't have to spend so much money into travels. That's why we could make concessions towards the fees. And so this would help everybody, but it also needs everybody to look at this and to work together.
Yeah, definitely. So the requirement is collaboration more than ever. That was the previous panel dedicated to networking that was led by, moderated by Agata, and different promoters, different musicians from areas, very different areas as well, also from the east part of the world, or east from us. They were also saying about that the need of networking is also another requirement that is for now and very concrete about logistics, about practical things. We have to communicate, and we have to be also as promoters very flexible to be open for that. Maybe not to stick for this 5 days in the year when I'm thinking about our festival, Jazz Art, but just to spread it, like extend it, do it differently. I think that this requirement is also in this way very important, that we collaborate more, we talk more, and we have to eat our egos. Sometimes that may be the most difficult. For many. So that is another one. We have already this kind of hints and very practical stuff, but yeah, about other demands that are for now, also for touring and for the artists. I've been talking recently with musicians who would like to play, and we also need that, and we also seek for that right now, big ensembles. I miss it very much, to be honest. Well, after all this solos online, I really miss orchestra. This is really something that I really would like to see right now, live. However, of course, this touring will be even more difficult. Big ensembles, orchestras, and then always the problem that was there before pandemic. If you can sleep in a double room, that is great. You know, that says something to us promoters. If you need like 10 single rooms, that is also a bit like sign that, of course, it costs a bit more. Maybe you don't like snoring, you know, all the problems that can also come from that. So can we like open a bit like secrets as for you as agents, promoters, artists? What could be like your requirement when you book, when you program, Josh? Is there anything that you put first? Is it something that you support Canadian artists first, or your local, or you have some kind of focus during the festival? What is your personal requirement when you are seeking, except of great artistic quality, obviously?
I mean, that's where it starts. and beyond that, to be honest, I mean, at our festival, we're lucky because we do, between the ticketed and free shows over the 10 days, we do about 180 shows. So we have a lot of flexibility in terms of the types of acts and emerging versus established and local versus from abroad. And we try to mix it up every year to have a really nice mix of all of those different things. But I would say, again, an understanding of the understanding. I mean, we've talked about before about the understanding of the market in terms of the audience, but there has to be an understanding also about, well, there's no good way to say this, your value as an artist in the market. And we deal with this a lot, especially with artists that are coming from overseas, because, you know, I was amazed when I was in Poland, I think last year, having a conversation with some artists and festival bookers and things, that they could say that, you know, they can make actually pretty good money just staying in Poland and touring around all the different cities in Poland and can put together a fairly good livelihood with that. But you take that same artist and put them in Toronto, where probably no one's heard of them before. I mean, there's just, you can't expect the same fees in a brand new market as you do in your home market or in the markets that are close to your home. And that's where, unfortunately, a lot of negotiation breaks down. Because even with artists that have a slightly bigger name in their home markets, they just don't have the appeal here. They don't have the reach. Then you add on top all the other expenses that come with the show, especially if an artist is traveling in from out of town. So there has to be an understanding from the artist standpoint, from the artist manager, the artist agent, that, you know, you can ask for 10,000 euro for your artist in certain markets, but in Canada, basically no one will pay that. So like that's just the reality of it. And so an understanding of that sort of nitty gritty behind the scenes is really important. You know, but again, from an artistic standpoint, jazz related, jazz influenced, you know, style of music, size of ensemble, we're open to anything as long as it meets the artistic standard. So then it just becomes a negotiation about the financials.
Yeah, that's great. So this is very complex. This is very complex issue, right, in every way. And I have to confess that I've been looking from time to time to some other screen and some kind of support that I have very offline, analog, and very online. This is my cell phone, because we are streaming live and we have some discussions going on at the moment. So I'm just checking out what is going on, I think, with help of my friends here, with the festival director, actually. So Tomasz is helping, Aneta is helping. We have already some comments, and I would like to maybe right now, as we are live, as we are sharp, just to mention one. Mary James is commenting that excellent to hear Jakob say that flying should become so expensive that we cannot afford it. I agree. Our planet is more important than what is happening now with COVID. Would you agree that, Jakob? You mentioned that flying, and you cross the ocean many times. Your artists are doing it all the time. Well, not at the moment. So you said also, so COVID, obviously. COVID is one thing. Our planet is, where we mentioned already carbon footprint, but would you also resign from that for sake of the planet and for sake of being more sustainable, Jakob?
Basically, yes. What I did say, what I think I did say was not that I was grateful that it would become so expensive. What I think I said was that I expected to be so expensive. But I basically agree. It's senseless. We have to find. We have to find more sustainable ways of traveling and of touring. Of course, it's going to be difficult. I will not be able to force the artists we usually work with to take a sailing boat to come over from New York and then go on tour. So this is not going to work. But like within Europe, it is our highest goal since quite a long time that we are trying to keep things on the ground, to let them travel by train, if that's not possible, okay, so you would take a van, but to avoid flying, not only for environment reasons, but also and especially for reasons to keep stress away from the artist, because it's just like this every day. So everyone who does it once in a while and knows how bad it is just to go to the airport, to do the queuing, to do the checking, to wait in line in a stupid place, to eat ugly food, and all those things. And this is just, it's in a certain way, it's perverse, and we have to find solutions for that on a long term or on a midterm, I guess.
Yes, and Jaak was already mentioning that, well, if you are determined, you can even walk, basically. You can take, okay, for Jaak it's maybe a bit easier because he's a guitarist. So maybe, I don't know how they're like walking with a drum set or double bass, like everything is harp. That would be maybe more challenging. But there is always some system, and there is, again, 21st century devices, vehicles that is possible. But, well, I was just thinking, because I mentioned before European Jazz Conference that Jaak is also involved in organizing it next year. Would you have some kind of issues also about that, about this new world, about post-pandemic? Did you already think about program in this sense? And your own requirement, your own sense as a musician, as a representative of Estonian jazz and also a promoter. Do you have some of your own thoughts now about this whole situation and abstract, totally apart from the pandemic? What are your personal high demands?
Well, as a musician, about traveling, I would say that once again, I think you have to be flexible, because I'm a guitar player, and at one point it became difficult to have a guitar in as a hand luggage, which I think is better in America nowadays, isn't it? After United breaks guitars or whatever, But I found out, okay, I play Telecaster, so 4 screws, 10 minutes, neck off, and it goes to suitcase. So I think I'm in no stress So I think you have to be flexible in this also. But coming back to the European Jazz Conference, we have not decided the topics yet, but actually what we were discussing, and which can be a bit related to those issues, is that we should talk more about mental health side, or I mean the stress side and those problems. Because, for example, I was teaching in London a few years ago, a bigger workshop, and we had, and it was connected to AEC, European Association of Conservatories, pop and jazz platform. Many people came all over the continent, and they were talking, bebop versus pop, or many interesting questions. And I asked the students, what did you miss, or what should it be about? And the students said there should be more about mental health, or I mean like the stress and how to deal those things. So I think I'm afraid that many musicians and many other people in music branch or in culture branch are very stressed at the moment because of the situation. So we have to look at this, I think, because yeah, I mean, you have to find a way to be relaxed and do your thing and not maybe overthink and keep going, and that's it. Live in a moment, as we said at the beginning.
Yes, thank you very much. This is a very important issue, actually, because we are talking about requirements, and requirement is always something as a law, as something very serious, as something that we have to fulfill. We have to follow this path. We have all these demands that they are just above us, and that can be really heavy. That can be really destroying in this situation as we have now. So you have to feel this. You have to be great. You have to, you have to know Instagram. You have to be social. If you're introvert, you have to go beyond yourself. So these demands can be really difficult to fulfill. And I think that, do you have any experience as you in different capacities of having this kind of support for musicians, especially who are struggling with this situation right now? Are there any programs in Canada, in Austria, in Estonia that you know that is something helpful, that musicians can go somewhere if these requirements are too much?
I know I can't speak very well on that subject in terms of the resources that are available. I mean, I don't know that there are that many resources specifically for artists, performing artists, musicians. That said, there is a local record label, independent record label in Toronto, that had some feedback, had some experiences with their artists, and actually set up a fund specifically for their label artists, that their label artists could access, no questions asked, specifically to deal with their mental health. So if they needed any sort of support, if they needed some counseling, something like that. And I think that's a fantastic model for the industry itself to recognize how important it is, because as you say, it's not just about being the best musician anymore. There's all these extra demands on professional musicians these days to be business people and to be marketers and to be publicists and all those sorts of things. I mean, it's an incredibly heavy load to do, on top of how much we beat ourselves up as musicians for not being as good as the next person. So there's a lot to deal with. And so for the industry itself to start recognizing that importance and to start setting up some resources, I think is vital to have that conversation.
Yeah, thank you very much. Jakob, Jaak, do you have any experience? Do you experience something right now that's happening to support? Lockdown, I think that it was very... it was the core point, right? We were all at home. I think that it was the most difficult part to go through. Now we can at least go out and we can play in some places. Sometimes indoor, sometimes outdoor. We can meet some people. But I think that really the situation of lockdown was heavy. So how was that in your countries? Jaak, what happened? Well, you had the easiest way of all of us, I think. So did you experience also some kind of, this is maybe a very personal question about some other musicians or artists who had to go through something like that. Did you experience in your environment any cases that this help was needed and there was some solution for that?
I think there are two sides of it. One is the economical side, and the other one is just not having an output. Yes, and as I teach in the music academy also, and we had lessons online. I know some students had economical problems because what happened here in Estonia, if you are a freelance musician, you could get support. But for example, if you had already a very little income from something else, what some of the students, for example, have from teaching, they were not available to get the funds. So I think they had problems. But of course, why we are happy and lucky here, we have had now 3 months therapy of playing for people, and we love it. So if lockdown comes back, let's see. The winter nights are long and dark here, but so far so good. I think we have been quite well.
Yeah, thank you. And Jakob, did you have any examples, any stories like how to cope, how to support? Because this is definitely the new requirement of the contemporary music market that we should provide also as promoters, as people who are dealing with festivals, with clubs. We should also provide something like that, or we should find, or we should at least know where to find it, and to collaborate on that. So Austria. Is there any good example? Is there any story, worse or better, that you faced during this time?
Yeah, well, there is a great organization in Austria called Mika, and in person, Helge Hinterek, I guess you know him. He is a super amazing person and a super accessible person, and he has, I think, he has the best network of knowledge of everybody in Austria, and I think his organization and himself have been amazingly helpful to artists to where to get fundings, where to get help, where to get money to survive, what to do. Like collecting the information from the different governmental pots and about how to deal them and how to fill the papers out to get this money. This about just to talk about like the financial things. Socially, yeah, of course, there have been terrible situations, and that's. But I can't talk about Austrians because our clients mainly in the United States or outside of Austria, at least. There have been all different kinds of stories. Some have been in a stage of their life and career where they probably said, okay, so it's also okay to stay at home for a year and to write music. And many others I had on phone, on Zoom, and all this other media telling you stories that they were sitting at home in New York in overpaid apartments with 2 children and being afraid of opening the door just not to meet the landlord because they would not have a dime to pay the rent from 2 months ago. And so this is of course a big problem for many of the artists too. And I also think the social thing in general is terrible, especially if you're used to go out and if you're used to have an audience, if you're used to perform, if you're used to interact and conversate with other people, and then being locked down from one day to the next. That's a pretty heavy thing, and that's what gave a lot of depressions to many artists, I think. And yeah, of course, I had experiences with as we have been in contact all the time with those people. Of course, like not only for business reasons, talking about the next project or about canceling a tour, but especially and also having private conversations and see how they are and if there would be a possibility of having them.
Yeah, thank you very much. So I think that we also had to develop all these requirements for ourselves, how to stay sane and in good shape and good mood also through this series. Well, there were also, for me personally, good points of having like not traveling like crazy all the time as we used to. I think that I read more books than ever last year. So that was very good point of that, and I think that was also very helpful just to find some refuge in nature or literature or elsewhere. But of course, this is for short term, and this is something that, for each of us personally works in a different way. I think that we are about to end, and I would like to mention another comment that regarding the mental health, that Mary James gave a very good comment on that. I will just read it. There's a good point about mental health. In the UK, we have the website that is very useful, as I see here, musicmindsmatter.org.uk. So this is also useful in these terms that if anyone is interested, there is in comments. We know that also situation in the UK is different now. We have some news from Sage Gateshead that many people will be unemployed there. The research that was in England regarding the musicians, 60% would like to change the profession. I think that we all know this research, we all know this data, and I hope that it's going to be not as bad as it's for now. However, these requirements, our main topic, I think that it will be changing slowly. I just will ask if there is any comment, any question from someone online, because I don't really follow that, just with the help of Tomasz and Aneta. So I don't see anything new. I will just give maybe a few seconds. It's very nice to see you all online. Unfortunately not here, but well, to Jaak, we can still walk to each other. It's not that bad. We're from Katowice, maybe it's a bit further than from Gdańsk, for instance, or Lublin, Białystok, from the eastern towns. Kraków is still quite far. However, so I think that we could just say bye. Thank you very much for being here.
Bye.
My name is Martyna Markowska. I just wanted to spare it for the end because everything what is going on here and the festival and you guys, you guests are the most important. So thank you very much for your time, for your patience. I would like to invite for another day for tomorrow's panels also, starting from 12. So there will be another great session of discussions. And of course, obviously, concerts are coming, and so 3 days now of great music here in Kraków. Thank you very much. It was lovely to see you. Jazz Juniors, we keep strong.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the invitation.